Okay, moving on from that last painting, we're going to paint a little woodland scene with a country road going through it here in France. And it's in autumn with some early snows, as you can see. So we've got some little white areas that we want to put into here. And we're going to paint this one with watercolour and then the use of sponging and texture. And we shall use not only watercolour but some opaque paint as well, and sponge the opaque paint over the top and the watercolour over the top to give us all these textures with an ordinary sea sponge, which gives us lovely textures. Before we do that, I want to put some masking fluid on. This one's called Pebeo, and it's a lovely gum because it's actually a slightly light blue in colour, which means we can see it on the paper. Some of the masking fluids, which are basically liquid latex, you can't see them because they're white afterwards, so it's a bit of a nuisance. But this one is a light blue colour, so we can actually see it. And I'm going to apply it with a clay shaper. That's a little tool which we use for modelling clay with. Got a rubber tip to it, so it's easy to clean. You can use a brush, but it tends to clog the brushes up, whereas these things just rub off very easily afterwards. You can get them in all different sorts of points, as you can see here. So what I need to do is take my clay shaper and paint this where these little bits of white snow are going to be, and it will dry, and when I paint it will resist the paint. So at the end of the painting I can take it off and I'll be left with these white areas. If you just rub off, I'll be left with these white in later if I want to. Now the only thing to watch out with this stuff is that if you leave it in the sun, in sunlight, it can actually soak into the paper and be quite hard to get off. So don't let it remain out in very hot weather. If you're painting out in very hot weather, keep it in the shade whilst you're working on it. So what I'm going to do then is work all these little textures of white up here. Dabble, dabble, dabble with the stuff, and when it's dry we'll start our painting. But it must be absolutely dry. Don't attempt to start it if the masking fluid is still wet at all. Well then, that's enough masking fluid for that. Just do the job nicely. We'll let that dry off before we put the painting up and start actually working on it. Masking fluid is about dry, but first of all we need to see what materials we're going to need to paint with. Down here beside me you can see that I have my little pellets of watercolour again. And I'm only going to need to use 3 brushes on this, I think. I've got my oval mop for doing the wet in wet. I've got a rigger brush here. Now rigger brushes are quite important. So it's got a long thin blade. It'll hold a fair amount of liquid, and it will mean that I can paint these long thin branches and twigs. Originally they were used for painting the rigging paint. They'd paint the line of rigging and the paint would close behind it slightly and make it even thinner and finer. And then an ordinary little round to do the heavier branches. And most important of all for this particular painting, some pieces of the sea sponge I was talking about. And look at the lovely texturing on that you can see. This is ideal for stippling, making the paint on here and stippling these textures of the leaves on that we're going to get later on. Apart from that, all I need is a jug of water and we're away. This is going to be a wet in wet technique, but at first I'm going to paint wet next to wet, so the two will blend into each other, and then we'll work into those afterwards. Now remember, with this painting in watercolour, we paint the light colours first. So I paint all my palest colours first, and we gradually add the others into that. So I'm going to start with my very pale, very delicate aureolin yellows first of all. Leaving white paper in between. You can see it's going to trickle a bit, but I'm not too worried about that because, you know me, I paint very loosely and freely. finish up with the light red, almost the Indian red. Much more orange now. Deep purple and some ultramarine. Try this purple in a moment. Before I do try the purple, I'm going to use a little bit of alizarin crimson, because I can still see some warmer areas in these trees here that are a little bit redder than the colour I mixed just now. There we go. Now I'm going to come down to those cooler. The purple and the Prussian, which will give me a lovely, rich, deep bluey purple. Now carefully, because we don't want to overdo that, some of the dark leaves showing through from behind, especially here. And here, coming onto the road even a little. Possibly use just to hit one or two of these very dark branches coming down through here, which are going to become a bit lost as I've done all this texturing. And just pull some of these out again. I would say that's a finished painting. I don't do much more with that. Just put a little signature down the bottom, as usual. And voila! Walk down that road, shall we?